Welcome back. All right, it's been 2 weeks, so it's time for a panic index, and I decided to wear my Thanos jersey today rather than the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy one. So, yeah, I figure Thanos, why not? Snap. Usually half the league is in the panic territory anyways, so the snap 50% works kind of there too. So, at the top of the board, as usual, happiness. Next level down is mostly happiness, maybe a little bit of concern. This is usually the one where people get mad. This is usually the one where people are like, I can't believe he'd put that. That's so stupid. I'm going to unsubscribe. I've seen it. This is where you find concern. So that level of concern, not necessarily panic yet. This is the panic part. And down here, it's a trap. These are teams that don't have any pressure on them right now. And so you got to watch it because they play a little bit of a loosey-goosey style of hockey. They can be tough to predict. So I'm going division by division. We'll start with the Atlantic. The Toronto Maple Leafs go at the top of the board. They're playing well. There's no reason to think that there's any kind of panic when it comes to the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're leading their division. And then really the thing with the Leafs that becomes a question mark is playoffs. And so the Toronto Maple Leafs, the regular season's great. Winning the division would be fantastic. They have to win come playoff time. Buffalo, it's honestly tough not to put Buffalo into panic because as much as I want to put them into that trap territory, the realization is this is a team that's been in a rebuild for a very long time. And everybody's lost faith in the rebuild. Everybody. I don't see anybody in the media saying, well, maybe if Buffalo... No. Everybody, and myself included, a couple years ago, I was all gung-ho for Buffalo, and hey, maybe next year. Nah. That optimism's gone for me. And it's got to be tough for the Sabres fans right now because this is a team that should be better than what they are. Look at that roster. That's not a bad roster, but they play like they are. Montreal belongs right up here next to Toronto. Montreal's played extremely well. And while I've seen a lot of comments about, they're too high on THG's power rankings. No, they're not. And now they're above the playoff line. And they just beat Tampa again. So Montreal, I don't see any reason to not have them in the top row. And don't be surprised when they pass Tampa and end up third in the division. And we start saying, hey, wait a minute. Could they catch second, maybe? Could that happen? And I don't know that I'd bet against them right now. They're playing with a lot of confidence is what it is. Montreal's playing with a very confident style of hockey that is very difficult to counteract. Ottawa. I'm going to put Ottawa here. They're above the playoff line. And while there should be, I think, some level of concern, yesterday's game against the Rangers, probably concerning. A couple of recent results, probably concerning. And that's where it gets tricky is you get above the playoff line, and then you got to stay there. Suddenly the pressure switches. Now instead of chasing that spot down, now you're trying to hold it, and that pressure definitely changes in game. Once Ullmark comes back, I'm a little more optimistic with Ottawa. I know Marilainen's numbers are very good. I don't expect Marilainen's numbers to stay really, really good. And last night's game, the Rangers lit him up 4 times, but only 2 of those goals counted. But still, that was 4 that he let in. So, the sooner that Ullmark comes back, I think the better. Detroit. I'm going to put Detroit back in concern. 5-on-5 scoring. They have to find 5-on-5 scoring. This is a team that got that coaching bump. Todd McLellan takes over, and everything goes really, really well. They had the 7-game winning streak, and now they've started to stumble again. Against the Flyers last night, they just couldn't generate anything. The Flyers are very good at shutting down hockey. They're very good at shutting down hockey, but Detroit, with the amount of talent they have and with the streak that they had been on, they just need to find a way to overcome that. So Detroit, I'm putting in the concern territory. I'm going to do the same with Tampa. The Tampa Bay Lightning have now lost enough games that their position in the playoffs is not certain. And while I still think they're a playoff team, I can't see them dropping out. The reality is they're not that far above the playoff line now. And with Montreal charging up behind them, Detroit playing pretty well as well, I would say that Tampa Bay, there's got to be some concern there that maybe we're seeing them move from the realm of contender into, maybe they should think about doing, not a rebuild, obviously, but some sort of a little retool, that kind of thing, if they continue to trend in the wrong direction. Boston, it's tough not to put Boston in concerned as well, isn't it? I'm not going to put Boston in panic yet. but they're trending in that direction. So I'm going to put them on the concerned line as well. They are currently below the playoff line. That's not optimal for them. And so I do see some reason for concern there. So it's 2, 1, 3, and 1. And Florida will round this out. I mean, I'm going to put Florida here. It is difficult to get overly concerned with Florida. Now, they've won back-to-back against Anaheim, which is fine. Going into the back-to-back with Anaheim, though, their recent record wasn't fantastic. But how much panic can you have when a team won the Stanley Cup last year and they were Stanley Cup finalists the year before, and they're still above the playoff line? And last year they were mediocre plenty of times, and then they charged at the end of the season. They won their division, and then they won the Stanley Cup. So that's why there's no real concern around the Florida Panthers. And once we get to Vegas, I'm going to say something similar about Vegas. It's just reality. When a team has won in the playoffs before, you have a lot less concern about struggles they have in the regular season after that. When a team has not had playoff success, there's a lot more concern that maybe that story is going to repeat itself because they haven't had that playoff success in recent years. Washington has to go at the top, or else the whole system's broken. They're number 1 in the league. There have been times where I have felt like Washington's been fortunate to get the results they've had. There's been so many very close games, and I do wonder if they're going to be able to keep this up in the second half of the season. But for right now, there's no reason for any kind of concern. I am wondering too, so come playoff time, how will Washington match up with someone else in the playoffs? Really depends on who gets that wild card spot that would play against them, because you have to think Washington's very likely to win the division. So, yeah, no reason for concern there. Pittsburgh. I'm going to put Pittsburgh next to panic. Yeah. Jari gets waived. Pittsburgh's had some struggles. They are in that area where they're flirting with completely being out of the playoff picture versus being above that playoff line, and I think there's definitely some reason for panic there. I am a fan of the idea that Pittsburgh needs to do some sort of a retool, not a rebuild. Because you've got Crosby, Malkin, Letang signed to long-term contracts, you can't do a full-on rebuild anyways. But you could do a retool, and I think that would be a smart move for Kyle Dubas. I don't know if he's going to do that, though. Carolina, trending in the right direction. Carolina got a big win last night, and they've been playing well recently. So, yeah, I don't see any reason for any concern around the Carolina Hurricanes at this point, other than I'm not putting them right at the top row yet. Freddie Anderson's back, and we'll see in the coming weeks. They'll probably be in the top row 2 weeks from now when I do the next Panic Index. But for this one, I felt like the second row's the right spot for them. Columbus, I mean, they're 7-2-1 in their last 10. They're below the playoff line. I would say that their record on the road is that one reason for just that minor bit of concern there. And since you play half your games on the road, it's weird to say it's a minor piece of concern, but yeah, I'll put Columbus on that second row. I would love to see them make the playoffs. It is going to be a very interesting playoff chase in the West. In the East, I should say. Unlike the West, where it doesn't feel like teams necessarily want that last playoff spot, in the East, there are so many teams playing well right now that Columbus may find themselves on the outside looking in, even though they're playing really, really well, because there are so many other teams in the East that seem to be picking it up. New Jersey. Can we put New Jersey next to panicked? It feels like it. The mood around the New Jersey Devils, media-wise, fan-wise, and everything, seems to have turned. A lot of criticism towards Sheldon Keefe. Some of it warranted, some of it probably not. This is a team that had its issues last season. They still have some of those issues, not to the same level, and I still think New Jersey's going to be fine, but they've won 2 out of their last 10, so I'm going to throw them next to panic because while they're not that close to the playoff line now, that could change if Columbus stays hot, right? Because Columbus is the next team in their division, Columbus being 4th, New Jersey being 3rd, so something to keep an eye on. The Islanders. Panic? Or trap? They feel like a trap game. They're far enough outside of the playoffs that I don't think they're realistically in the hunt right now. But there's also not a lot of pressure on the New York Islanders right now. So I feel like they're a trap game. They're a team that can play sort of loose. And again, for an Islanders team, because the way they play the game is not really a loose, wide open style of game. But there isn't that much pressure in Long Island on the New York Islanders, and so I'm going to put them as a trap game. I think they're fully capable. The Rangers, not at the top yet, but getting there. Second row. They are 6-1-3 in their last 10. The Rangers playing very well. The Rangers have been impressive. Their point streak is now at 9 games, and so I do think that the Rangers are one of those teams to watch when it comes to that Eastern playoff chase, and could make things very difficult. In that I think they should be able to catch at least a wild card spot. But this is where New Jersey has to watch too, because the Rangers, that New Jersey third place spot would definitely look better to the Rangers than being a wild card team. I don't think they want to play either Washington, potentially Florida, if Florida ends up winning the Atlantic. If it's Toronto, if it ended up being Toronto and the Rangers, that series would be absolutely fantastic. I like that idea. Philadelphia, they're a trap game. I don't think anybody's expecting Philadelphia to go on a run and make the playoffs. Like last night, they beat Detroit, and technically better record than a lot of the other teams that I've got in this area, but I don't feel like the Flyers have any pressure right now to make the playoffs. I don't think the expectation is there. So, yeah, they're one of those teams, too, that can play that kind of loose style of hockey. And as much as Tortorella will tolerate it, but they're playing a system very well. They're suppressing shots by the other team. They're playing that low event hockey. And they're keeping themselves in the chase. They're definitely a trap game. They have won some games recently because I think teams... I'm not going to say teams take it easy on Philadelphia, but they're not able to fight through that defensive wall that Philadelphia puts up. It's kind of impressive. So that's the East. 3 in the top, 5 here, 3 here, 3 here, and 2 here. And now we move out west. Vancouver, it's panic in Vancouver. Now, Bob Stauffer made a comment about Vancouver, 2 riots and no Stanley Cups. That's a bit offside. It's offside, and I say this because I do not like the sniping back and forth. Vancouver absolutely belongs next to the panic magnet. They only win on Saturdays. It's becoming a bit of a remark I make during videos, right? But tomorrow they're in Edmonton. I don't expect them to win in Edmonton. Last night against Buffalo, they had a 1-goal lead going into the third. Couldn't keep it. Didn't even get to overtime. Now they're losing in regulation. Now those overtime and shootout loss points, they're not getting there. And now they're losing these games in regulation. I think at this point, Vancouver has to be next to the panic because the JT Miller trade didn't go through. And now the worst part of this, and I heard somebody talking about this in the media yesterday, is now the Rangers are playing well. They don't really have any pressure to make a JT Miller trade. New Jersey, do they want to add JT Miller to the mix when they're struggling? So there's definitely some question about, even if Vancouver's trying to trade Miller right now, would the Rangers have any interest? Would New Jersey have a lot of interest? So yeah, Vancouver definitely belongs next to Panic Index, or next to the Panic Magnet in my eyes. Vegas goes right here. I'm not going to put them in concern because again, they won the Stanley Cup in 2023. They're still first place in their division, and they're just going through a one of those things. How many times do I talk about in videos? 82 game schedule. Teams are going to go through those periods of time where the puck isn't necessarily going in the net for them, where they're losing games they would have won earlier in the year and games they'll win later in the year. So I don't see any reason for concern around the Vegas Golden Knights. I think they'll be perfectly fine. Maybe goaltending. Goaltending is the one area where lately it's felt like it's let them down. Both Samsonov and Hill, not as sharp, but it's an 82-game schedule, and there's plenty of time for that to be fixed. Seattle, I think Seattle belongs next to Panic. I do. They're not in the trap game range yet. The Seattle Kraken win games here and there, but they're still not winning often enough. They're not putting together the kind of streak they need to in order to really and truly be a threat for a playoff spot in the West. So I figure concern doesn't work. I don't qualify them as a trap game at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and throw them next to Panic. Notice I didn't put the angry one on the board because when I was setting this up this morning and I was looking at all the logos, I was like, I don't think there's any angry fan bases right now. I don't think so. Like Ranger fans and Buffalo fans earlier in the season were angry. I think at this point, Buffalo fans are just like, come on, just do something. I don't think it's anger as much as anything else, but you guys can let me know your thoughts. Anaheim. Anaheim's a tough call, aren't they? They've been struggling lately, but I'm going to put them next to the Trap. They're not expected to be a playoff team. I think the systems are okay. I think this is a team that's trending in the right direction. It's just slowly trending in the right direction. Probably more slowly than some fans would want. But yeah, for the Anaheim Ducks, I think they're a trap game in that if you go out and you take them lightly, they're probably going to win that game. The LA Kings, are we in concern territory yet? It's here at this point, and this is where, again, I will apologize to LA Kings fans for making them number one on the power rankings a couple weeks back. I won't do that again because I know what that does. I'm kidding. If I feel like a team belongs number one on the Panic Index, they end up number one. But for the Kings, it's been a little more of a struggle lately. 82 game schedule, all of that same conversation. The problem being that Edmonton and Vegas could end up really far ahead of them if LA doesn't pull themselves out of this. And I don't think they want to be on the road going to Edmonton or Las Vegas to start the playoffs this year. Edmonton belongs up here. I mean, seriously, Edmonton, there's no reason for any level of concern, panic, anything. The Edmonton Oilers are playing really, really well. So 3 of the 4 teams in that top row are from Canada. So, hey, who knows? Maybe the drought ends this year. It won't, but maybe, right? So, yeah, Edmonton at the top of the board. I know that the McDavid suspension gets talked about a lot. I've already talked about that plenty on the channel. But generally, when McDavid's out of the lineup, the Oilers still play pretty well. And I thought they played really well last night against Washington. Just Logan Thompson shut that door. Thompson's playing absolutely fantastic hockey. Calgary, I'm going to put them in the concern range. They're 5-5 over their last 10, but they're just above that playoff line. And they're fortunate that the Canucks are just, Keystone Cops out there. Benny Hill music playing every time the Canucks are out there lately, other than on Saturdays. But the Flames need to win a little bit more regularly, pull themselves up well above that playoff line. And so I'm going to leave them on that concern line for now. San Jose, I can't qualify San Jose as a trap game right now. San Jose right now looks as bad as they did last season. And I didn't think that was going to happen this year. With the way they started the season, even though the record was bad, they were playing better. They're not now. Last night they had that 5-1 lead, and as soon as Nashville scored that goal to make it 5-2, they just stopped. They just stopped. And it is bizarre how quickly San Jose's body language changes. The team just their confidence is very fragile at this point. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on with the San Jose Sharks going forward, is that confidence seems to be really, really shaky. So that's the Pacific Division. I've got 3 teams in the Pacific Division in the panic range. Let's go on and move to the Central. St. Louis, I feel like St. Louis belongs on the concern line. They're not above the playoff line, and they're still losing often enough that it's making it difficult for them to catch Calgary. Maybe eventually they get there, sure. But some of the losses they've had, I think there's a reason to have some concern. They did beat Vegas last time out in a shootout. They did get a couple of wins over Calgary last week, but still not above the playoff line at this point. Colorado, is it concern? I'm going to put them here. I feel like the Colorado Avalanche are still playing well enough. They did get a loss their last time out against Minnesota, but they're still playing well enough. And they're 5-4-1 in their last 10. They host the Winnipeg Jets tonight, which should be an amazing game. But yeah, Colorado, I'm going to put them on the second row at this point in time. Chicago's a trap team. Chicago is the definition of a trap team. I think they're playing better than their record. I think that they're having fun out there. And it definitely feels like the coaching change has worked to change the mood around the team. Even though the results are still not great, the team seems to be a little more unified and playing a little better. So that's good news. And as a trap team, it means don't take them lightly, or they can absolutely win, as teams have found out recently. Dallas. Second row for Dallas. Dallas I would have had in the top row, I'd say about a week ago. I probably would have put them in the top row. They had that long winning streak. I don't know that they were playing great hockey during the winning streak, and I think their recent stumbles where they've lost, I think it's 3 out of 4 they've lost now, that balances it out. I feel like that's fair. Wins, some losses here and there. Their ability to fight through what Carolina was throwing at him last night. Probably not at a level that Pete DeBoer is going to be happy with. So for Dallas, I don't have any reason to have them here because they are still top 3 in the very difficult to stay top 3 Central Division, but some concern. Winnipeg, same. Winnipeg 4-4-2 in their last 10 games, 82-game schedule. Very likely that you're watching them just go through this period of time where they're just having a hard time finding the back of the net. But Winnipeg, they should be able to fight through that and probably still end up winning that division. I say probably because Dallas and Colorado are both capable of having very strong runs in the second half of the season. Utah, concern. Utah, of course, it came out yesterday that they're having trouble with trademarks, and I'll go through that in a video today as well. But the Utah Hockey Club, and they can't be called that either, apparently. Again, I'll get into it in a video later today. But Utah, outside of the whole trademarking issue, they're winning often enough to stay in the hunt. But they're losing often enough that they're not making it to that playoff line, which seems to be a storyline in the West, which I talked about in that Turtle Derby video last week, and it still feels like that is absolutely what's going on. Minnesota, I feel like Minnesota belongs on the concern line. Now, I know they just beat Colorado, but with the amount of injuries they've had and the amount of question marks with this team right now, I think that the concern line is probably the right spot for Minnesota. Now, if you believe they belong here, you can you get a whiteboard. You can probably go down to like Staples, get a whiteboard, get a whole set of NHL stickers. I get mine from eBay or from Amazon. You can get your magnet sheets on Amazon. You can magnet up all of the stickers that you get. You can laminate them as well. That's an option. And then you can make a panic index. And good luck with that. So, yeah, I'm going to put Minnesota right here. And I do think there's reasons for some concern around the team. Just the little things that are to me sticking out. And hopefully they can stay in the top 3 in that division. And it may very well just be echoes of last season, where last season, for a long period of time, they looked like they were cup contenders. They could win that division. They looked great. And then they faded late in the season. They were out in the first round again. So that is always a concern with Minnesota, is they peak early and then they're out in the first round again. I really don't want to see Minnesota out in the first round again this year, because that's a storyline that's been going since 2016. And it's kind of boring. I want to see Minnesota at least in the second round. Nashville's a trap team at this point. They're playing with house money. There's no pressure on Nashville. Nashville's gone from a team that were very disappointing at the start of the year, and now they're a team that, because they have a poor record, I think teams aren't necessarily overlooking them, but you're more likely to start your backup against Nashville, right? You're more likely to overlook Nashville for what your game prior or game after might be, because that's against a team above the playoff line. Nashville's a team to watch in the second half of the season. I don't think they go on a run that gets them into a playoff spot by any stretch, but they could make things interesting if they keep winning 6 out of every 10 games from here. They are 6-4 in their last 10, so one thing to keep in mind. Anyways, there you go. Your panic index for January 22nd of 2025. This is always something that's just, to me, it's just fun. I don't plan this out ahead of time. Every time I do this, it ends up being a little bit different. I try to change the magnets on the left so that what I'm grading them on, it might be a little bit different too. But let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.